Hello, welcome to my channel. Atheists are always exposed as desperate fools when their evolutionary narrative security blanket is questioned. And this is a perfect example. I mean, we have to deal with these people who just say the most desperate things and they huff and puff and they bark like dogs trying to defend their evolution, but they are just exposed as fools, as desperate, mindless fools who are just trying to desperately cling to their evolution and without any real biological evidence. They expose themselves as being biologically weak, that their evidence biologically is just weak and desperate and clutching at straws, and they equivocate. And always start with the obvious. I responded to some evolutionary article. Wait a minute, what is it? What was the article? Oh, someone was, they were either defending, they'll, I don't know, that someone was pointing out the fallacy of evolution. We have, I've, they say we essentially have every stage now from a terrestrial animal to one that is fully aquatic. That is so absurd in whale evolution. But he was saying, however, the fanfare stemmed from merely part of a jawbone and some skull fragments, no more. They base so much on so little, and everything they fill the gaps in with artistic impressions. And and of course, evolutionists don't like their mountain of rubbish, or mountain of evidence, what they call mountain of evidence, which is really just a mountain of rubbish to be exposed. That evolutionists don't like to see their mountain of evidence being exposed as a mountain of rubbish. And their evidence is really weak. They base so much on so little. Oh, we've got every step in evolution. Sure, they have. Sure, they have. So, how did the nose turn into a spout? How did the teeth turn into whatever they used to filter plankton? How did the limbs, the feet, the legs turn into fins? I mean, there's no biological evidence that genomes can dramatically change like that. There's just none, and they don't have every step. They just take a few different species, line them up, and then say, "Look, here's the steps." Oh, and it's just the bone. Yeah, I know it's a jawbone, but the experts can interpret the whole thing, the whole species, how it where it started as an amoeba and it turned into a whale because we have this jawbone. It is so stupid. But the evolutionary biologist gets away with it because they're telling atheists what they want to hear. It's an answer that does away with God, so they don't question it. They just accept all the hype and the fanfare and the exaggerations. Excuse me, but I said evolution exists only in their imagination. It will be hilarious when God himself questions their claims on the day of judgment. Because they'll say things like, well, you see, God, we have these fragmented bones and artists' interpretations based on the evolutionary narrative. Is there evidence there? Evidence is going to be they exposed. And I hope God does question them because they are when we argue with them on the internet, their strength is only in numbers, not in science. But they huff and puff. Like, look at this. This guy called Tim Hardcastle. You call him Tim Hardcase. Uh, you're telling silly lies in public about a subject you obviously never taken the slightest interest in. Why? See, I know about evolution 1,000 times more than this guy. This guy's just some keyboard warrior who sits in his mother's basement or something. Or he's just a bitter atheist, angry at God because he can't put his penis in whatever hole he wants to. You can't have sex with chickens or something because God says it's immoral, and he's angry at God. I needs my sex with my chickens, or something like that. It's always sexual and it's always sin, and it's always angry with God because they can't put it in, and that's all it is. Put it in wherever they want. But he's saying, I know I've never taken any. I've never taken any. I've spent like the last 30 years studying this. That's why I can destroy evolution at every second and every level. And anyone who says they believe in evolution, and you never get the experts online. You only get these hard cases. You only get people like Tim Hardcase who will argue, who have no qualifications, probably no responsibilities. Who knows? Grandma's making him his porridge or whatever it is while he's playing Call of Duty in the basement or something like that. But he's an expert but he's got no qualifications. You'd never get the experts debating in these forums. When they are online, they're in very strict controlled environments where you're heavily censored and only easy targets are allowed in. And anyone who knows what they're talking about, they avoid like the plague. But you never get the experts. The experts know they can't just make stuff up. But these people have no degrees, no obligations, no experience, and they can just talk out their backside continually. So this guy's saying, I know nothing about it. So what I said was to Tim Hardcase, I know that reproduction is limited to the existing genome and that genomes cannot change. The human genome remains 23 pairs of chromosomes regardless of allele frequencies or diet or climate, and that all chromosome disorders are harmful. Remember that, all chromosome disorders are harmful. Okay, so the human anatomy doesn't change. And any mutations, evolution is said to be driven by copy errors and duplication errors, which is absurd. Chromosome disorders never, ever create beneficial outcomes. And we also see this in the wolf genome. Regardless of how many breeds of dogs they create, the genome remains 39 pairs of chromosomes, and the more breeds they create, the more problems arise. Right? Purebred dogs have more prone to sickness and disease and disorders. Because the more you mess with the genome, the worse it gets. It never gets better. It gets worse. So I say there is absolutely no mechanism within the genome itself that can change the basic anatomy of any species. There's just not. And then look what he says. But these is just nonsense you made up. I didn't make it up. Human genome is still 23 pairs of chromosomes. Dogs still have the 39 pairs of chromosomes that wolves have. Even a chihuahua still has the 39 pairs of chromosomes. I'm not making it up, but see how they try to belittle you. They try to make themselves look like they're at a high position. We just point out facts and see how they flounder and they shake and shimmy and dance and do anything they can to avoid the facts. But these is just nonsense you made up in your head about things you never bothered to study. Obviously, I never bothered to study anything. That's how I just said all that. And then because he just Googled chromosome disorders, and he just got this. They do it all the time. They're not experts. They'll just oh, you said chromosomes never change. Oh, they do. But I said chromosomes, when they do change, it's never beneficial. Right? But he's trying to look smart and say, but these is just nonsense you made up in your head about things you've never bothered to study. For example, he's because he's just Googled this, right? 1 in every 800 people have 45 chromosomes. 1 in every 800. Wow. Have 45 chromosomes instead of 46, right? See, but there's 46 chromosomes, but they're in 23 pairs, right? 23 from the mother, 23 from the father. And that's why genomes can't change, because they've got to align perfectly, right? If they don't, there's infertility problems and it creates things like Down syndrome and stuff like that. Hence, the copy errors are harmful. But see, he's trying to say, well, 1 in every 8 person has 45, but that wasn't what I said. I said the human genome remains 23. They always do this. They always equivocate or use equivocation. I, but generally, the human genome remains 23. A healthy human genome remains 23 pairs of chromosomes, and basic human anatomy doesn't change. He's just pulling this out of his backside, trying to sound smart, like he's got a gotcha thing, and it's so stupid. He's actually proven my point. He says, for example, about 1 in every 800 people have 45 chromosomes instead of 46 as a result of fusions, usually what's called a balanced Robertsonian translocation. Most of them are perfectly healthy. No, they're not. That's a lie. That is an absolute lie. None of them are healthy. So he's actually lying, right? What he means by perfectly healthy is that physically you see no change, right? It can happen, but their offspring are more chance. I'll show you in a minute. But he says again, you are confidently lecturing in public on things you've made up about a subject you know you've never taken any real interest in. The guy is delusional. See, the guy is following a narrative as all like the left do. He's not arguing with me. He's arguing with a narrative. Oh, creationists, they don't know what they're talking about. They're just they really don't know science. And yeah, I'm proven, but I'm proven how weak his argument is. He actually proved my point by bringing up Robinsonian translocations, right? But again, I'm confidently lecturing in public on things I've made up about subjects I know you've never taken any interest in, right? So they've never taken interest in this. Really, they don't. When they learn the garbage, they learn this evolutionary spin, the evolutionary dogma, the evolutionary doctrination, and it doesn't cover these things. So when you present them with real problems with evolution, they don't know how to deal with it. So they've got to try to desperately. They use equivocation to try to desperately argue against what you're saying. Sure, some people are born with 45 chromosomes, but it's never beneficial and it never becomes a universal phenomenon. And I'll show you why in a sec. I said, see how desperately you atheists defend your evolutionary security blanket. And I got from Wikipedia. You'll probably say, oh, Wikipedia is not a good source. Oh, crap. But this is true, right? There's plenty of sources that demonstrate this. It says carriers have 45 chromosomes, but are usually phenotypically normal, yet face higher risks of infertility, miscarriage, and offspring with unbalanced translocations, such as Down syndrome. So people with 45 chromosomes become infertile, right? They can't carry their babies. And the babies they do have are more chance of being born special. Let's say special like Tim Hardcastle. And there's also other things like people born with Robertsonian translocations. They may look normal on the outside, but their IQs are much lower. It generally affects their IQ. And that's a problem. The 1 in 800 are usually these guys. He's probably one. He could have Robertsonian translocations, and his IQ is small. It's either that or he's just a desperate atheist having to desperately defend his security blanket. Okay, so I said, in fact, Robertsonian translocations prove that chromosome disorders are never beneficial, as I already mentioned, and are a mistake, never the norm, and no evolutionary change in basic human anatomy occurs. So, even though some people can be 1 in 800 is born with 45 chromosomes, the human anatomy doesn't change, right? And it results in them not only that they're more likely to have problems when they try to reproduce. So mutations cause problems. So the more mutations there are, the more problems there are. The more people who are born with 45 chromosomes, the more miscarriages, the more infertility you have, the more people born special you have. It never results in a gradual evolution into improvements. It results in a degrade in the genome. And I go on to mention a normal genome remains 23 pairs of chromosomes, and mistakes only result in harms and never anything beneficial. And so I'll point out you atheists bark and huff and puff, but all you really do is expose your weak position biologically and your desperation to hold on to a biological fallacy such as evolution. So this guy's saying I know nothing about what I'm talking about. He proves my point by trying to sound smart. He actually proves my point. It's so pathetic and it's so sad how these atheists defend their evolution. So there's no logical... He will never accept what I'm saying because he doesn't have to, because he's got the popular vote. He's got the majority. So he can always go back to the majority and hide with the majority and take strength in the majority. But their strength is not in science. It is in the majority. Evolution's strength is not in science. It's in the majority. Evolution's strength is not in science. It is in popular opinion and the popularity that men want to sin. The fact that men love darkness rather than light because their deeds are evil and want to continue to sin. And evolution says you can sin and do whatever you want because there's no God. And that's the strength of the argument. Atheists needed an answer that doesn't include God, and they invented evolution. They did it at a time when a lot about biology was not known, irreducible complexity was not known, DNA was not known, genomes was not known. So they could come up with this idea that life is just like clay that is formed by the environment. But the more we learn about life, the more we know that evolution is not possible. But atheists cling to it because the only other answer is God. The fact that atheists have to come up with a biological fallacy, the only thing they can come up with is a biological fallacy as an answer in opposition to God as creator, is proof to me that there's a God. Right? They can't come up with a real answer. They've got to come up with a biological fallacy that is propped up merely by popular opinion and the popular vote and the strength of the majority, and not in any biological science.